seen the Veronica movie? Because I haven't. But this story is based around the true original tale that movie is inspired by. So it's terrifying. Now don't worry if you haven't seen it. You don't have to keep up with the creepiness. But I thought that this would be very good for theme of the month, mixed in with a kind of there was no real crime. So it's a stretch on the wine and crime aspect, but it is actually the only, or at least the first case, where any sort of paranormal phenomenon was actually documented in a police report. So that is very interesting to me. So I hope you guys enjoyed this story as much as I did researching it. It was terrifying, but hopefully it will scratch that Halloween itch for you. So let's dive right into it today. As you can tell, I am always in theme. We'll get there. And let's get ourselves nice and comfortable for this wine and crime night. People like hearing me say that, I guess. Wine and crime. Wine and crime. Anyway, grab yourselves a nice glass of wine, a little vodka and Diet Coke, or a wild cherry Pepsi as we dive into the Vallecas case and the death, unfortunate passing of Estefania Lazaro. So this case is named after the Madrid neighborhood where everything took place, in the 8th apartment in Cal Luis Marin. I hope I'm saying all of these right. I might not be. But in this apartment, a repeated sequence of paranormal events took place. So the events happened in 1991 when the then 18-year-old Estefania Lazaro, daughter of Maximo and Conception, was living with her family, helping take care of her 3 younger siblings, a pair of twin sisters, and a brother whom was the youngest. Only a year before the events we're about to be speaking of, Conception, her father had died. But before he'd passed, Conception, who's Estefania's mother, had brought the children to say their final goodbyes. Now, the family did not get along. The grandfather despised them for some reason, but she was doing so just in good faith. But he didn't like it, and he kind of saw through it. And it is actually reported that one of his final words before passing was whispered to his granddaughter, Estefania, saying, and I quote, "If I cannot harm you in this life, I will do it said, everyone was experiencing this. And one day, after a large gust of wind came through their home, furniture was moving. A picture of Estefania had fallen to the ground, and her mother had picked it up to look at it when it had burst into flames. The picture of her was charred, her face was very distorted. I'll put it here. And the frame was totally fine. It was just was when he'd returned to the bedroom that there were two things that had changed his mind entirely. To his skeptical standpoint of the situation. When he'd first entered the room, he'd noticed a very large wooden crucifix on the wall, with a smaller crucifix hanging off of it, a pearlier one, kind of like what you would get at communion, and also a poster. And in the mere seconds they heard a scream, they ran outside to look. Still nothing there. They returned. Seconds of them all being away from the room. They'd returned to the large wooden crucifix on the wall, turned upside down, with the smaller pearly one on the floor. And the poster, well, it and the door actually had 3 large claw marks ripped into them like deep scratches. And it was at this point that even if one of them had staggered behind to do that, someone would have seen them do it, heard it, and they wouldn't have had enough time. So, after they'd seen all of these changes, Jose had said that he went from being skeptical to considering this night absolutely horrendous. So the officers then left, as there was nothing that they could do. And, I mean, it wasn't a break-in, which is what they thought it was, and they couldn't assist in any way at this point. And shortly after, the family had moved out as well, and Jose had written an official police report as to what they had witnessed. After the family had left, however, the home in apartment number 8 never experienced paranormal activities again, and the family themselves never experienced anything further. Sometime after, Estefania's mother was assessed for psychological examinations, where they found that she had signs of emotional instability and anxiety, and they thought that she could have amplified or intensified the situation. However, it was not only her experiencing these things, and the important thing to note is that the factual evidence of whatever was happening is what was written in the police report, as they were very unbiased, not in relation to the situation, really weren't having what they were selling, you know? So, as I kind of stated earlier, very loosely on the crime part, but in the spooky story, police are involved, so I just